Did you know that there are scenes in the manga that did not get animated for this movie? Let's talk about it. Hello there, my fandom friends! Today, we're going to be yet again talking about Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, the new movie that just came out a few weeks ago. The three manga that this movie covered is part of 16, all of 17, and then part of 18, all of course by Gotoge Sensei. So if you have not seen the new Infinity Castle movie or don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend going back and watching that before jumping into this because there will be spoilers about the whole movie. There will not be spoilers as far as the manga content goes moving forward, so there's no worries. You will not get spoiled for anything to come. But like I said, today we're going to be discussing 40 different differences that I noticed between the manga and the animation of this movie. This can be entirely different things that happen from the manga to the anime. These could be extra scenes. These could be things that happened in the manga but not in the animation. It's a lot of different things that we're going to be talking about today, but a couple things before we get started. Of course, the manga and the animation is going to be entirely different. So we're not going to be breaking down every single panel because obviously that would be very different. We're going to be talking about the major points. Second, again, I am going about this based on just my memory after seeing the movie 3 times, so I'm likely to miss certain things. So if there's anything that you remember that I did not include in this video, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. After watching the movie, I just really wanted to look back on the manga that I hadn't read in like 3 or 4 years and just compare the two and make a fun video out of it. So let's get started by discussing these 40 differences that I saw between the movie and the manga. Our movie starts on chapter 140 from the manga 16 of Demon Slayer. In the manga, the first kind of scene we see in the Infinity Castle, besides Tanjiro and Muzan yelling at each other, is literally Gyu saving Tanjiro. And so everything that we saw in the movie of the Hashira falling and the Nosuke, Zenitsu, Genya, everyone else, that did not necessarily happen in the manga the same way. We did not get to see hardly any of that. We really just got to see Tanjiro and the initial gates opening into the Infinity Castle with the Hashira falling through. 2, branching off from that was the really sweet scene that we got of Obanai and Mitsuri. When they are falling, obviously Mitsuri is screaming, she's scared, she doesn't know what's going on. Obanai is there, of course, to console her, and you can obviously tell that they love each other and they're trying to grab each other's hands as they're falling. Oh my gosh, this was not in the manga, and this was a needed to see scene in the animation, so I'm so glad they added that in. 3, the next scene is actually also for Obanai and Mitsuri. It is the scene when Obanai swoops in, takes out a bunch of demons. Now, all of this was in the manga as it was represented in the movie. However, as they are running away together, Mitsuri's sword actually forms into a really cute heart. That was not included in the manga. Again, another really sweet scene that people who love that ship just had to see. 4, this one is about Zenitsu and his descent into the Infinity Castle. In the manga, we actually see him running, he hears a sound, and he thinks that Muzan is close by. He directly references Muzan and then says he will never forgive him. However, in the anime, in this movie, we see that Zenitsu is actually more targeted onto Kaigaku. Kaigaku's name isn't said, but neither is Muzan's, and of course Zenitsu is led to Kaigaku. He is the one that he's been looking for, and so we can only assume that of course he heard Kaigaku and not Muzan, which I think is a really cool detail that was missed out in the manga, because why would Zenitsu just all of a sudden care just for Muzan when of course he just found out about what happened to his master Jigoro? Of course he would want to face Kaigaku. Let's jump right into Shinobu vs. Doma. Number 5 is Shinobu's flashback of her running to Kane that was shown in the movie This was not shown in the manga. There's lots of flashback scenes like that throughout the whole rest of the movie that were added in that were simply just not in the manga, but I love those extra tidbits being added in because it really just puts the whole story together. It gives more context for these characters. In the manga, we just saw Shinobu and Kane together in her final moments. It was never this panic of Shinobu trying to find her older sister. Again, I think this made it a lot more realistic as well. Number 6 involves Doma and his interaction with Kane. In the manga, we get 2 really short clips of him defeating her, but we don't actually really get to see it happen. In the movie, however, we do get to see some of Kane's flower breathing as Doma is remembering her, which I thought was a really good detail because that's a breathing style we haven't really gotten to see yet. And I think it's smart that we see it from Kane first a little bit before Kanao. Obviously, I don't want to see Doma harming any more characters, but I think that that scene did add a lot to just the storytelling of that whole moment. And of course, all of the emotions that Shinobu was going through as well. Number 7, this is one of my favorite details that I just did not gather from the manga that well. This is, of course, seeing Shinobu's katana go into her sheath and then it making the clicking sound as she's turning it, which then triggers the new poison to be made through her ability. And this is something that wasn't totally clear in the manga because we see her swinging her sword around to try to activate that poison. However, we never really got a close-up of like her hand on the handle of her sword and like turning it in any way. It was really just Doma explaining what was happening. But in the animation, we got that. And then of course, added on with the sound that the sword made was also really cool. Of course, can't really get that in the manga, but I really enjoyed that detail. And I feel like it made me understand her ability and her fighting style so much more. Number 8, another one of my favorite details was understanding Doma's blood demon art. This was entirely different in the anime compared to the manga. And of course, maybe there's some kind of translation issue. I myself watched this in Japanese, whereas when I read the manga, that is in English. So there could be some translation issues, but I do think that this was a change that they made from the original manga source. And that being, in the manga, Doma explains that his blood demon art was able to suck Shinobu's blood, and then his fans were able to disperse that. To me, that doesn't totally make a ton of sense, and it's not really as interesting in my opinion, but in the anime, Doma explains that his blood demon art is the scattering of his own blood through his ability. I also think that makes so much more sense because it's a blood demon art. It's literally his blood. He's a demon. It's his art. But yeah, love that explanation. A little bit more detail into that for sure was needed. Number 9, Shinobu's ability of Dance of Centipede was very much extended in the animation compared to the manga. In the manga, it was pretty quick. Doma was like on the ground the whole time, besides when Shinobu pinned him to the ceiling. However, in the movie, we really got a cool interpretation and visual of Doma just completely flying backwards. He's on the floor, he's on the walls, and he ends up on the ceiling. You could really feel his panic more, in my opinion. Of course, that's also added by the music and the voice acting, but I think it was depicted so much better in the anime. I think that was also an important ability to expand on because that really was Shinobu's final stand against Doma. That was the last trick she had up her sleeve, so might as well go out with a bang. Number 10, we get a flashback in the anime that did not happen in the manga. That, of course, is when Tanjiro asks Shinobu if she's angry. Yes, in the manga and the movie, we both get an image of Tanjiro's face, but the anime took it a step further by showing off that scene from season 1 when Tanjiro asked her. This, I think, is really important because it shows that that happened, and that was so long ago that people just watching this for fun maybe wouldn't remember exactly that scene. There's also scenes like that throughout the rest of the movie that were in both the manga and the animation, so I think that also made that part flow extra better. Moving away from the fight between Doma and Shinobu, we are now looking at some other scenes. Number 11, we have the scene when Tanjiro loses his footing, he's not really paying attention, and he falls through the Infinity Castle floors. In the manga, he actually catches himself by just grabbing his hand on the ledge and pulling himself up, and and Gyu tells him to focus more. However, in the anime, he actually falls pretty quickly and he uses a water-breathing form to get himself back up. And then, of course, Gyu says the same thing, you need to focus. I think this made a lot more sense because if you're just falling all of a sudden, I feel like your first instinct wouldn't be to necessarily just like grab something that fast at least. But by him falling just instantly and then realizing that he was falling to use a water breathing form, I think made a lot more sense. And it also showed that he evolved from the beginning of the movie when he couldn't break his fall to now he's a little bit more focused and he was able to. 12. Now this is a scene that actually happened in the manga that we did not get in the anime, and that is Amane, Kagaya's wife, giving Kiriya, their son, the Ubuyashiki outfit that Kagaya always wore as the master. Now, I really appreciated this scene in the manga and really wish it was added to the anime because we already don't get a ton of scenes of Amane and the Ubuyashiki kids, so I'm always down to see more of them because I do think that they are an integral part of the story. They're just as important as anyone else, so I was a little bummed that that was left out. However, they did explain it so much better about how Kiriya had become the new master and everything related to that. Number 13. Now this one is a huge story changer for the Demon Slayer story as a whole. In the manga, Kiriya mentions that he knows where Muzan is because of Yushiro's ability. He is trying to tell everybody to tell the Hashira and the Slayers to move north because that's where Muzan is, and he claims that Muzan has not changed position. However, in the anime, it is the complete opposite. Nobody knows where Muzan is except for, of course, Tamayo because she's grossly attached to him. This was a really important scene to show, and I think it's a better route to explain that nobody knows where he is because why would they? I think, of course, by the next movie, we will, of course, know that with Yushiro's ability and everything else that happens, but I like for now that that is staying a mystery, whereas in the manga, they just kind of randomly knew where he was. I feel like it also backs up what Muzan was saying in the beginning about how, well, you'll have to find me if you want to defeat me, and it just makes so much more sense this way. Another thing involving Kiriya and the Ubuyashiki kids, they talk about how Zenitsu is about to face an upper moon and how he will definitely need backup because of his specific rank as a slayer. Now, all of this was not included in the manga. Of course, it can be inferred that they sent Yushiro and Murata and that little group of slayers to help Zenitsu. However, that was not said in the manga, as well as not explaining Zenitsu's specific rank at this time. The ranking system of a slayer isn't totally brought up a ton, but we get a really good explanation from Inosuke in the entertainment district when he is talking to Tanjiro about it. And I think that this really helps everything come full circle and understanding probably where Zenitsu, Tanjiro, and Inosuke are as far as the slayer rank as of now. Again, it just shows how much they've grown up until this point, and of course by Zenitsu defeating an upper moon, it doesn't feel as random if we know his rank from how far he's come. Number 15, a scene that I particularly enjoyed because I am a super fan of Yushiro. We got to see a lot of extra scenes of the crows flying around using Yushiro's eye and getting to see the impact that was playing on all of these slayers in the Infinity Castle. Of course, we are getting to see all of these slayers fighting the demons. We are getting to see these hot spots of where powerful demons are based on their blood demon arts. It's all very interesting, and none of those details were really in the manga. Some of that was explained in like dialogue, but we didn't really get to see anything, so I feel like that wasn't super clear until this movie showed that. Number 16, piggybacking off of that, they explained Yushiro's ability so well in the movie that the manga I don't think really gave enough credit to. Of course, you can kind of infer that Yushiro's ability is the reason why everything is going so well right now, but the anime just visually showed it so well. And again, Yushiro is such an underrated character, so this made me so happy to see one of my favorite characters from Demon Slayer just get the spotlight they deserve. Jumping into the fight with Zenitsu and Kaigaku, number 17, we have a really interesting detail about Jigoro, their master. In the manga, in between chapters, we get a really cool detailed section that explains that Jigoro was the Rumble Hashira. Now, he got this name because if you are a thunder breather that becomes the Hashira level, you are titled the Rumble Hashira. This was just a cool detail that was not added in the anime, probably because there was no real reason for it, but if you're not a manga reader, now you know that little detail. Number 18, I just wanted to quickly mention, of course, as you probably saw, the whole fight of Zenitsu and Kaigaku was very expanded from the manga. One panel that's in the manga is just shown in so much detail and multiple scenes, and of course the visual aids, the voice acting aids, the soundtrack, the colors, literally just everything about it adds to it that you just don't get that impact from the manga. So I just wanted to say that there were so many scenes that were added to this fight that still obviously had the general fight within, but just so much more added different angles and things like that to this movie. Number 19, this is an emotional one for me personally. This one involves Zenitsu and the form that he created. So in the manga, he of course uses that same exact technique that he has made himself. However, he explains to Kaigaku that he created that form to be an equal against Kaigaku. Of course, that is not how it goes in the animation. In the movie, Zenitsu explains to Kaigaku that he created that form to use alongside Kaigaku while they were battling together, not against each other. This scene got me really emotional in particular because it just shows that Zenitsu is so much of a better character that he wanted to create this technique to fight alongside someone that he looked up to, rather than just creating this technique to make sure that he won in a fight against him. Like, that doesn't totally seem like something Zenitsu as a character would do. And so I think the route that the movie took was so much better. Number 20, now this is a detail that if you blinked, you will miss it, and the anime does not explain this. So if you don't know this detail, Kaigaku was actually one of Gyome's children that he took care of in that house, and Kaigaku was the kid that turned Gyome and all of those kids into a demon so that he could escape with his life while the rest of them either passed away or survived in a way like Gyome did. The manga explains this in a little bit more detail. I would have loved to see just a scene in the animation of maybe Gyome and Kaigaku like locking eyes for a second as Gyome's falling. Obviously, Gyome would have taken him out within seconds, but there is that detail that I also find really interesting. And maybe just a little bit of a missed opportunity to explain in full in the anime. Number 21, Jigoro and Zenitsu's interaction within Zenitsu's mind as he's thinking about him and apologizing to him. He thinks he has done all these things wrong and Kaigaku turned out the way he did because of him. And in the manga, Jigoro turns to Zenitsu and he says, "I'm proud of you." However, in the movie, I think that his words are so much more beautiful and meaningful by him saying, "You are my pride and joy." There's just something so much more emotional about that, at least to me. I know that's just a difference in words, but I truly do think that that is so much more impactful in the movie than it was in the manga. Number 22, after Yushiro saves Zenitsu, we see that he is putting bandages on him in order to save his life. Now, something in the animation that I think they left out was exactly where those came from. Those actually came from Tamayo, and they are special bandages that stop a blood demon art. Of course, that makes sense because Yushiro is using that to stop Kaigaku's blood demon art that is coursing through Zenitsu's body. However, there's not a lot Yushiro can explain about that without kind of drawing unwanted attention to himself. The others are probably already suspicious of him and kind of where he came from, and he can't really say like, "Oh yeah, I'm a demon," because then they'll go after him without really understanding what's going on. So there is more details in the manga regarding that I really appreciated. Number 23, there is a very specific manga panel in the book that shows Yushiro and Tamayo basically having this conversation about Yushiro standing as a slayer because she has to go and do everything with Muzan, and he is very not happy about this. He makes a very silly face that I wish we could have seen animated. I'm really bummed they left this out because we need more scenes of them because they are very important characters to the story, but also specifically for this entire Infinity Castle situation and everything going on with Nezuko. But yeah, I wish that the anime showed more of this, and obviously just Yushiro's super discomfort in leaving Tamayo in this situation. He did not want to do that, but he ended up doing it to save the day. Related to that scene as well, in the manga, it shows that Murata and the other slayers in that group were a little bit onto Yushiro in some way, but they didn't exactly know why or how. The manga just basically described that they sensed something off about him. Number 24, the scene when, of course, Murata notoriously brings attention to himself from yelling about Zenitsu dying. In the anime, we see that one big demon comes. However, in the manga, there's actually like a group of 6 demons that come. And those demons, specifically in the manga, apparently smell really bad. They're spitting acid, and Murata and them are super struggling with fighting these demons. And of course, we see Yushiro just on the side like, come on, you're the reason why they're here. Which of course that did happen in the anime, but I think it would have been kind of funny to see like this acid spitting demon and the demon slayers and Murata complaining about how they stunk and just all this random stuff that was happening in the manga, but oh well. Number 25, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but in the anime movie, we saw that there are these demon hotspots that we are able to see through Yushiro's ability, his eye, that we did not get to see in the manga. Now, these are certain sections in the Infinity Castle that will glow depending on how powerful the blood demon art is in that area, depicting basically demons. And so of course in the anime we see that there are 5 really large spots, these hot spots on the map, which are of course the upper moons, and the rest are all small because those are all of the lower moons, which at this point Muzan made basically every other demon a lower moon, which I don't know, is kind of weird because they're also weak against my boy Rui. You know what I'm saying? We are almost to Akaza, Gyu, and Tanjiro, but before that fight, we have a couple of scenes. So of course, starting off with 26, Akaza's entrance in the anime is so much better than it is in the manga. In the manga, we get like one picture of just like him crashing through everything, but it's just, you can't tell what's going on because in the animation we can see all of the colors and his punches and everything that's going on, but in the manga it's like one picture of just like boards flying around. Number 27, the Muzan cocoon scene. We got to see in the manga, however, it was literally 2 pages and most of it is Tamayo on the outside looking at this cocoon. We don't even get to see what Muzan looks like. And of course, in the anime, we really don't get to either, but at least we get to see Muzan's eye and kind of a little bit of what he's doing. There is definitely a lot more explanation and visuals in the anime compared to the manga here. Number 28, this scene also really did an amazing job of explaining what Tamayo and Yushiro were doing together in order to fight against Muzan and help the Slayers. And that is the importance of Tamayo in this situation is that she is suppressing Muzan's power as best as she can while still attached to him. And that is keeping Muzan away from looking at what Yushiro is doing with creating this map of his castle. I think that was definitely needed to explain in the anime because it really, again, just shows what an impact these two are playing within this whole battle. Whereas in the manga, it's kind of inferred, but it's also just kind of brushed away. Number 29, the manga gives an extra detail that the animation did not, and that is that Kirya is actually one of the children that was in Final Selection. Well, not participating in Final Selection, but rather kind of hosting it. He was, of course, the dark-haired kid that, of course, now has grown up to become the master. Number 30, related to Kirya in this moment, in the manga, we actually don't get to see a ton of him. And this is something that I'll probably make a different video about because everything they added of Kirya and the Ubuyashiki kids and just their understanding of everything going on and trying to save the day here was not really depicted in the manga as well, in my opinion. So I'll probably make an entirely different video talking about this. However, forever. In the manga, we did not get to see Kagaya come forward to Kirya to help kind of guide him through all of these really powerful emotions that he was going through in these moments. In the animation, we do get to see Kagaya come, and he's just trying to ease Kirya's mind and trying to help guide him in any way he can. Of course, I super love that. I am a super fan of Kagaya, and again, it just shows how much of a father figure he is, of course, to all of these slayers, but to Kirya, that is like actually his dad. So I feel like it's so much more impactful. Number 31, we are moving to Nezuko, the one and only scene that we get of her in the anime, which I think that if they added this scene from the manga, it would have been really cute. We did not get to see this in the anime, which I'm a little heartbroken over, but before Nezuko gets the medicine from Tamayo, there is a scene in the manga that we get to see of Nezuko seeing Urukadaki for the first time, obviously since season 1, and it just explains how happy she was to see him. And she's kind of laying in his lap, and you can just tell that he's happy, even though he's wearing a mask, you know he's so happy. And I think that would have been such a cute moment to see in the animation, especially because we don't get like any Nezuko in this movie. I know people are complaining about that. That's just how the story is, but I think if they added that scene, it would have been better, but oh well, again. Number 32, I am not going to talk about a ton because this scene is very important in my opinion that's in the manga during the fight with Akaza versus Gyu and Tanjiro, but it's not added into the movie. I don't exactly know why. It probably was because of the pacing. They didn't want to jump around too much, and this scene I think will be a really good opening for the next movie. And so I'm just praying that they do this and not just omit this scene because it's really important. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to spoil, but maybe I'll make another video talking about this. Let me know in the comments if you want to know this particular scene that I am talking about. So officially jumping into the whole last fight that we have with Akaza versus Gyu and Tanjiro, most of all of this was actually very, very close to the manga. However, there were a few things that I want to talk about. Number 33, we get a little bit more insight and detail into Gyu and Tanjiro's crows in the manga versus the anime. In the manga, it's explained that Gyu's crow is actually very old. He kind of just hobbles around and Gyu is very nervous about him like all the time. And I think that that's so cute and just another little detail that was just omitted from the anime because it doesn't really need to be said, but I'm glad it's in the manga just to give that crow a little bit more personality. I think it's also just so fitting for Gyu to have a crow like that. Number 34 is about the transparent world scene. I'm not gonna talk about this forever because the movie has already done that and I don't want you guys falling asleep on me like half the theater was doing when I saw the movie during this scene, but tons of scenes were added to this whole transparent world scene of Tanjiro trying to understand what's going on. I'm not going to really talk about the specific details of that because for one, I don't really care. And for two, there's just so much that the anime added that just helps understand the transparent world so much more than the manga did. So I'm just going to give it props and move on from there. Number 35, there's another scene in between chapters here where we get to see Yushiro just throwing his eyes around. I don't mean his eyes, I mean his eyes. That. And Murata and the other Slayers are looking at him and they're like, what are you doing? Little scenes like this where I'm like, why was this not in the anime? And maybe this will be in the next movie as just like a little funny thing here and there, but I would have loved to see this. Number 36, another really humorous moment that was not added involving Murata is Murata actually ended up holding Zenitsu at one point because Yushiro was throwing his blood demon art around. And Murata, just like Tanjiro earlier in the movie, was not paying attention and was not focused, and he actually fell through the board. And he's screaming, and Yushiro is just like looking at him from above, as well as like the other Slayers that were with him. And Yushiro's just like okay with them falling, and he's just like, yeah, I guess they're dead. It's like the other Slayer is like losing their minds. And it's just a really funny scene that I so wish was in the anime. I mean, maybe this will be in the next movie, but I kind of doubt it. Again, these are scenes that just like happen in between chapters, so they're just like extra scenes. So we'd be lucky to even see them animated. Number 37, this was not in the manga at all because this was actually a scene that was added during Hashira training arc. This is the scene where Sanemi and Obanai are fighting the demon before they enter the Infinity Castle the first time. Now that demon, they never defeated. However, if you look really closely, you can see that demon in the Infinity Castle movie, and some of the Slayers actually defeat him. It's a really quick scene that I actually missed on my first time watching it, and I want to say it's after the Zenitsu and Kaigaku fight. It's towards the end of the movie somewhere. It's when Obanai and Mitsuri are running away, trying to conserve their strength and letting other Slayers fight, and it's one of those Slayers that actually takes that demon down. So a really cool detail there that is just anime specific. Number 38 is kind of this whole last scene of the movie that we get to see, and that of course is everything involving Muzan. When he is talking, we get to see a little bit of his face and what his body is turning into, as well as Nakime changing the Infinity Castle around yet again, and it has become so crazy that it's like this cube and things are going everywhere. It looks like the castle is expanding and changing. This of course did not happen in the manga because they had to have the movie end somewhere, and I think that that was a really good cliffhanger to end off on. But yeah, the manga doesn't delve really deeper into Muzan at all at this point, so we were very lucky to get those scenes. Number 39, you may have noticed that I actually didn't talk about Akaza's backstory at all, and that is because for the most part, this was literally taken from panel to panel, shown in the animation like almost 100%. Even the dialogue in these scenes, of course there's extra like angles and things shown here and there, but for the most part, this story was 100% accurate. However, again, in between some chapters in the manga, the author actually explained more of Akaza's backstory that they didn't get to fit into the story. And those extra bits that the author explains in between chapters is actually not shown in the animation either. I'm not going to talk about what that is because it's literally paragraph of context that we don't get in the animation that is revolving around Akaza's backstory, mainly discussing who the person was that put the poison in the well. However, if you are interested in learning more of that, I made an entire video discussing this, so feel free to check that out above if you do not know the extra bits of Akaza's story that was in the manga but not the animation. Lastly, we have number 40, and that is one of the last scenes of the movie when Tanjiro's crow and Gyu's crow are standing next to them, and they're just hoping that they are going to be okay. That kind of worry was not really in the manga, and I really love how that was added into the animation. That is going to wrap up the 40 differences that I noticed between the manga and the animation. Again, we started off on chapter 140 in the manga, and we ended on chapter 157, kind of halfway through that chapter, which ends off on manga 18. In the comments, I would love to hear from you. What were some of your favorite details that I discussed that were in the manga but not the anime, or the other way around, or just any of the differences that I talked about between the two? And was there anything that I missed that you picked up on while watching the movie if you are a manga reader as well? With all of that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time for some more fandom fun. Bye!